When the thoughts are calmly collected and the imagination is properly directed, the dots are easily connected.
So, like, let's just dive right into this. Like, as all these things are resurfacing, these ancient practices and techniques, what is your take on like woke culture? And
So like let's start with like, how do you define woke culture? Like what is your definition of
Right.
like what it means to be like woke?
right,
Let's start there.
contextualize. That's a good question. Exactly. So, the woke is in like this idea that there's knowledge of the social inclusivity, that we're in this time now where we also have to start embracing that even such things as gender are fluid. You know what I mean? Because there's a knowledge that the rest of us don't know, which is, I think they're making reference to something like the Aquarian age, which represents androgenicity, and that humanity is now like one awakened sort of spirit, and that's the second coming, that's the Messiah. But like the idea that like it's being hijacked, I define woke culture as the culture of awakening people who don't even realize they're actually part of the psyop, the hijacking of the Aquarian age.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's an interesting concept. Like, I think a lot about this stuff. Like, before I became spiritual, I was a conspiracy theorist through my own personal like dark night of the soul, where I thought I was dying, and I started looking into health and started opening my eyes to like things that shattered my paradigm of like reality, of like, oh my God, like I didn't know this was even possible. And now I'm thinking of like, oh, wait a minute, like people have an agenda, like people who are creating a system. Like, think about it as an architect that builds a system. You want to build it for yourself,
architect.
right?
Yes.
Yes. And that's like the man trying to play God and trying to control things.
Exactly. The Masons, essentially, the G symbol, right? Grand architect.
And there is one true architect, which is the creator.
Yes.
And I believe that we are all part of that creation. And the more I dive into my own self-awareness, I feel more and more like we are in some sort of simulation like the Matrix, and this kind of stretch of these opposing dualities is there to challenge us in ways that we probably don't even understand with the conscious mind. It's like a spiritual kind of battleground.
Absolutely, man.
So,
no, well said. We wouldn't understand if we're not symbol literate, and the symbols were specifically forbidden, so it's hard to say.
So when you ask me like, what do I think about this stuff? It's like, again, like I think when you think about it from like a high level like conceptualization, it's like, yeah, like, you know, the freedom to believe in what you want to believe and to express yourself the way you want to express. Like, yeah, I agree with that. But what I don't agree with is like the method to which I see, you know, them going after kids and not allowing them to choose, but making them think they have the choice by confusing them.
Yes.
And for me, that's scary, right? Because like there's a lot of things that I've seen that go against my own beliefs, and I'm open to challenging my beliefs when I look at the outcomes. And the one thing that I've learned through my whole journey is like, if someone's saying something through the media a lot, you should really look at what the other side is saying, just to understand the other side of the coin. So when you talk about
specifically when the media is indoctrinating, is constantly echoing, absolutely.
And so like, listen, if an adult wants to become a fish, let them become a fish. Like, I don't care, you know.
Well, yeah, because that doesn't bother us. But when, like you said, it's
when
going after your own children,
kids,
being a father,
when they're vulnerable, like, listen, like my generation, like, you know, kids go through a lot of shit. There's a lot of confusion, especially, you know, when your household is not in order and your parents are going through stress and maybe they're working all the time and you don't have any really spiritual teachers in your life, or even religion is kind of fading away. And although I have my own viewpoints on religion, and again, the people who architect the religion who are hijacking that for their own agenda, but there still was a message there around values and stuff, and family unit.
Absolutely. And that was the original school, was Sunday school.
Right. And so like, when I start looking into stories of kids who had transitioned and how much pain they're in now and how it didn't solve their problems and how it's this big business, it makes me question, like, are they really trying to help them?
Yeah.
Or is it because they're greedy and they see an opportunity and they're willing to, like, you know, rape the earth in any way possible, like even the children? It's like nothing phases me anymore. Right? So it's like,
I think that's what happens when you start learning about how the world
right.
works.
But then if you can play on somewhere in their belief structure where like, hey, they're going against their free will to choose, and they get people angry about that, it creates this crazy toxic environment where people are fighting over things, and they don't even know what they're fighting about, you know. And so it's
just
very,
fighting for the sake of fighting. It's just another
because they
opportunity
do
to-
believe they're right, you know. And listen, like a lot of things I don't agree with, I want to be educated. I want to try to understand their perspective. And I have some good friends who really believe in that, and I really try to understand how it works, how all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this concept arises where, you know, for thousands of years, all of a sudden it's changing now, where we have to let people believe that they can do whatever, to the point where, like, you know, I think it's weird that, you know, they're putting litter boxes in schools and telling kids they can go and go to the bathroom. in
Are
a
they
litter
doing that?
box.
Did you hear about that? I didn't hear about the litter boxes.
They're
I know there's surgeries to like make them look like animals and stuff. You know?
No, like,
I'm not
and-
surprised
and-
though. The litter box even,
and, you know,
Oh
like
my
putting
God.
tampons in a men's bathroom.
Yeah, that was actually Trudeau. We can thank him for that.
But it just doesn't make sense. Like, women don't even get tampons in their bathroom.
Exactly,
You know, for
exactly.
free. And I'm like, okay, what are they trying to do?
There's a
here?
statement that's being made here.
You know, but
Do you
know-
think that what they're trying to do is show us just how much they can get away with? Let's just get to the real
Ah,
question. Do you
man.
think this is such a demonic and diabolic agenda that's just ridiculing and mocking, making a mockery of all that's divine?
I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't. But what I know is for every action, there's an opposing reaction.
Causation, yes.
And what it will get people to do is to wake up, and we talk about the definition of woke or becoming awake, is to have a different realization. Like, actually, something is going on that I don't agree with, and it gets them to check their own belief system. It's like, hey, like, is this right or wrong? Do I agree with this or not? And
That's
you
a
know-
good thing.
you
Yeah.
know, and I think
to
that-
now cross-reference, to now digress and
that
say,
the
hey,
whole thing we've experienced in the last 3 or 4 years since COVID happened, and a lot of research is coming out that they're still suppressing, that they're still kind of,
Yep.
you know, trying to put a blind eye to, but
Yep.
you're starting to see, like, hey, so many people that didn't have any awareness to this are now asking questions.
yeah.
And I think that's a good thing.
Because the answer is in the question. We need more questions in
And-
order for there to be ever any kind of answers.
Yeah, and I also feel that, like,
There wasn't enough questioning during the scamdemic, and that's what I call it. I don't even use the word pandemic.
yeah, people were waking up to it. It was so out of their. I remember when my paradigm reality was crashed. I didn't know what to believe. I was just like so used to things being a certain way, trusting a certain thing, trusting these things, and all of a sudden I start losing that, and I don't know what to grasp onto. Like, who
Right.
can I trust?
So it's like a second awakening of your spiritual, because you said your spiritual awakening was the result of your paradigm being.
Listen, I was ready for this. Like, I was already like.
Yeah, right. Like you had already moved to Costa Rica.
I knew all of the other side of this argument before any of this happened, and I was already questioning as it went down. I knew things were coming down the pipeline before they even came out.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also knew, like, you know, if something needs to really change, like a system that's been here for thousands of years, it has to completely fall apart. And greed and corruption and evil is always self-consuming. It doesn't know any better.
Yes,
It just
yes.
keeps going.
Yes.
And so does it have to get really bad before it completely breaks? And maybe I won't even see the result of that in my lifetime. You know, and I feel that
Yeah.
the powers that be, you know, they're
Or I
acting-
like to say the powers that were. I don't think they be like they used to be.
I don't think so either,
You know,
but
they're falling, and this is their last attempt, I think, to.
yeah, but I think they're acting out of fear.
It's like you said, because it inevitably consumes itself. It destroys
So
itself.
so when you have this power, your biggest fear is losing it. So
Yes,
you know,
yes,
they want to
yes.
maintain it. So what do
Yes.
they do? Okay, let's create the internet. Let's track everyone. But what happened was, at the same time, they had the ability to track everyone. Also, everyone had the ability to share what they were doing too, and communicate
Right.
faster than we've ever seen before.
Right,
And now they
right.
can't even control that.
Right,
You know,
right.
things get out. They're trying to censor it before it even gets out.
Totally.
This whole
But-
censorship thing is
And
like.
that's a big thing. That's a question now, because if the algorithms, which are like these, literally like it's the new God, as like Brother Ben Stewart actually has made a great metaphoric. He did a video on that as well. Like the algorithm is the new God, so to speak, because it's like it's what's able to sway what's going to be put in front of you. Now, who's in charge of the algorithm? Now, AI, again, like that's even another talk in and of itself. But like the censorship question is huge, because in the age of information, the greatest, I always say, it's no longer ignorance is no longer bliss, it's sin. However, in the age of information, also with technology, comes the age of misinformation, and the real strategic display and secretion of that. It's like intoxicating us. Now people are confused with what do we believe, what is
which
true.
is good. Because
I
they
think
get to
so.
a point where they don't
I
know
think
what to
so.
believe anymore.
At least they're open.
They have to step away from the program to search inward.
Yes.
And I think like if that's where it's bringing us to a complete chaos where no one knows what to believe, what they hear, where can they go?
Yeah.
They go crazy or they go inward, you know?
True. Yeah.
So
true.
I think like
it's complete either meltdown
the way it manifests
or build up.
The way it manifests is out of control, but the end result is going to be the same. You know, and I believe that fully.
I like your optimism, man. I appreciate it.
Listen,
I feel that optimism can be kind of toxic sometimes, but you can tell when it's coming from a realistic, grounded place.
My fear-based mind that's into conspiracies wants to think that like there's only one way out is to like go to war with who's doing this.
Yeah,
that's what most of it is. Like, how do we stop it? And then, or you feel
because fear is either recluse, you either want to go into isolation, go and live in the mountains, so to speak, or it's I want to fight.
But I want to do it in a way that's not going to be hard for me. So how do we fix the system without the whole financial system collapsing, where everyone, the whole world's going to go into chaos for a while? Is it possible to circumvent a structure that was in place to do a certain thing without it breaking? I don't know if that's true. So I'm open to like, we may go into complete chaos before it gets better. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's probable, actually. Who says like AI is going to be bad? Like
That's the thing. It's subjective
right now, you know, and I think what's going to happen is the fake world is going to be very interesting for a while. And then eventually people are going to be like, I don't even know what's real anymore, and they're going to walk away from that in a way because everything is going to be the same. You're not going to be able
I
to
agree, like
think
you said, it comes back to the same place because I think because we're of the creation of God, and you know, with His creation, He left a piece of Him in us. That's what I mean by of. Like we're a subsidiary or almost a derivative. We come equipped in our DNA cellular level with pattern recognition is one of them. All right, imagination, another one. These are like the divine faculties. Intuition. Right, which is our kind of like GPS navigational tool. The other one, I believe, is the lie detection. So I think that it's just a matter of time before everyone's going to be able to see, regardless of censorship, they're like you said, they're either going to have a meltdown and they're going to go inward and they're going to have an awakening, a breakthrough. Because before a breakthrough is a breakdown, and that's part of the transformation process, death. Right?
And so like, and then what if like AI becomes like actually like
these movies that we've watched, Terminator 2?
Yeah, but it has the same probability of saying like, hey, like in order to create a system that lasts, I need to destroy this current system. The financial system needs to collapse. Right. All of these things need to go. We don't know if it's going to be the reset button. Yeah. When the cat gets out of the bag, it could be the worst of our imaginations. It could be the best. We don't know, and we don't know if there's people that can also create AI to combat that. We don't know, like, you know, like I think all cards are on the table now. I heard this interesting story again. This is like another. What was that? It was something around like Project Looking Glass, which is like one of those like conspiracy theory CIA things where, you know.
Do you think it's a conspiracy theory? I think that's a conspiracy fact as much as Project Bluebeam and Project.
Yeah, like they're all
Paperclip, Operation Paperclip.
Like some of them are proven. Some
There's
of them
documentation. Are still, like this stuff is not even a theory anymore.
Yeah, so like Looking Glass was this thing they had. And I don't know all the facts 100%, but my understanding was
the
like
lowdown again.
They had some device with some kind of advanced AI way back in the day where they could kind of predict the future, and they'd put in these outcomes and it would show them what they had to do to get there, or put in scenarios and it would give them a probability of like what would happen in reality. And I think that fed into a lot of the predictive programming, shows like The Simpsons, the newscast, like how to get things to happen. Yes. And the way this story goes from apparently someone who was working on that project was that up until 2012 it worked like a charm, but post 2012 they couldn't predict anymore. It always came back to the singularity of like
what was the singularity?
It was an event where they didn't know what it meant. It was like something was happening that was bringing this kind of like a unity point from what I understood. And what that meant was, and what I interpret that is now we're in kind of like free flow time. Like now it's like anything could happen.
Yes.
You know, they've lost control and they're trying to do whatever they can.
Yes, like we said, to have that one last grasp.
And they're losing control. Like you see what's happening. It feels
By
like
the
they're
day.
losing control.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are going to suffer because of it. And a lot of bad things are probably going to continue to happen. But I think we're in the age of like truth, transparency, of accountability, where everything is going to come to the surface. And all of the lies are going to be shown. Like
my favorite quote, in the age of Aquarius, truth and knowledge will take care of us.
And
Because
so
Aquarius as a constellation, as an archetype, represents interconnectedness. It represents transparency. It represents these exact things.
and it's going to be hard truth for a lot of people. And I don't
Yeah.
believe any of our history anymore. Like I used to like think I knew.
When
and
you
look
start
into
studying things like mudslides and Tartaria, I know it's hard
it just
to
opens
trust
your
any history book.
it opens
ever.
your mind to the possibility that
Yeah.
it's more likely for me that what I've been told is not true. I don't know what the truth is, but it's more likely that the story I've been told is not 100% true. There might be parts of truth weaving into it, but there's an agenda. Like imagine we had a flourishing civilization 7,000 years ago that had free energy, no wars. Would they want us to know that even existed?
Right.
They wouldn't.
No,
because
they actually mystified it. They made it. Pyramids became so mystical when we know, but clearly what they are were free energy devices, preserving life, hence the mummification process.
there's so many things they don't have an explanation for, and
What-
we're so
yeah.
advanced now that how
Or
could
they
you-
do, but they don't want to
They don't wanna
admit
reveal
it.
it.
Yeah, which is why
Like I'd love to know what's in the Vatican underneath in all of those libraries.
all those books they claim to burn in Alexandria. You know what I mean? All those books that say, here's why astrology is literally the mother of all science and why it's not about fortune telling and horoscopes. However, it's possible of doing that, not to absoluteness, but it can help predict in the same way that the weather forecast technology can help us forecast weather. What seasons to come, we can prepare ourselves, you know what I mean? Fill up the pantry for winter, so to speak. But yeah, man, like the Vatican, when you say I'd love to know what's in there, there are books, like I have one over here. This one alone. Look at the size of this one. There's a brother,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
I mean, look no further.
Yeah.
They were trying to say during the Renaissance, they were trying to tell us, they're trying to show us, but they weren't allowed to because the term is commissioning. They were being paid for by
And
the same
I don't
elites.
even think half the things that were made in the Renaissance even happened then. Like some of the complexity in some of these
What do you mean?
sculptures.
By the art that was created?
Like some of them, like I think that came from a way previous time where they claimed it to be theirs.
Oh, okay.
You know, like
Okay.
like some of these like sculptures.
So higher intelligence, kind of like that which wrote the Torah.
Maybe a higher intelligence, maybe a higher intelligence in humanity, maybe a different time, but like some of it doesn't make sense. We haven't even
Doesn't
seen
add
anything
up, that's for
come
sure.
close to it
Yeah.
in modern days, you know, with the most advanced machinery or artistry. But again, like I can consume myself trying to figure out the truth externally, or I can continue to kind of go inward and try to like really just understand. You're like, why am I here?
yeah,
What is the purpose of this? You know,
Exactly.
like-
Unravel self.
Mhm.
If you just, for the tracking purposes, keep conscious of the mic. Yeah, yeah.
And I'm-
Unravel yourself
And
as
I'm-
to how did I end up here? Why am I participating in? Because we're all co-creating. We're all
Mhm.
participating.
Absolutely.
So that's good that we're taking it to this direction. I wanted to say, like, because I know now part of what you're doing with the breath work, which has become as if it's anything new.
Mhm.
It's as old as astrology. You know what I mean? The
It's
monks
been
have been
here from
practicing
forever, yeah.
right? So, but like, what practices do you recommend? Because I think you've been around long enough and delving into a lot of different things. You're friends with Wim Hof himself. I mean,
Mhm.
what practices? And there's a no bullshit kind of guy
Yeah,
who
he's-
approaches, right?
He's the best, yeah.
The best. I love him. I mean, he's so
Very
many.
inspiring because he speaks his mind. He doesn't give
Yeah.
a shit, you know, and
Yeah.
he just does his thing.
No
right?
filter, no dogma, no trying to capitalize and brand and be the man. He just
Mhm.
facing it head on, like a true Aries
Mhm.
that he is, literally. And sure, no better a person than a twin, of course, because if you want to try to say like, oh yeah, it's just genetics, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like people would always say to me like, oh yeah, you know, you just got good genes, dismissing, negating the hours of blood,
Hard
sweat, and
work, yeah.
tears of hard work.
Mhm.
Exactly. But yeah, what practices would you say you found? Because you've done a documentary even you put out on ayahuasca, which has
Mhm.
also become another big trend. Everyone's like, you know, woke
Yeah.
after doing ayahuasca. But like after all you've experienced and seen, what do you recommend and what do you find is the ultimate practice to go inwardly and unravel?
Ultimately, it's self-inquiry.
Self-inquiry.
It's at the end of the day, everything that I did, all the practices was about expanding my own self-awareness. pushing
Yes.
myself to the limit of my mind, doing like extended fast or sweat lodge or ice bath or plant medicine, breath work. What I realized was like, yeah, I was trying to latch onto these tools, but what I was actually doing was learning about myself, really trying to understand like what makes me tick, and really listening to my emotions, to my triggers, and knowing that that's just something inside trying to get my attention, and there's something for there to me explore. And when you start getting clarity and you start understanding like your truth or what you need to do or what that next step is having the courage or the discipline or the motivation to take action on it.
Yes.
To really do something about it, to make that change, to have that hard conversation, to close that business down that's not serving you, to tell someone where to go if they've been treating
that boundary,
you, you know, and that's the hard part. And we all have our reasons for having the challenges. Like,
because change means death of the old.
Yeah, and for me, and like I've gone through so many death processes in my life and to different degrees, but I realized like there was a part of me dying. There was a belief in me dying, like fear of failure, fear of being alone, fear of being rejected, you know, fear of conflict, which ties into fear of being alone. Like I didn't want to have conflict because I wanted people to like me. I want a lot of friends, and that came from my childhood. But now that I see it, and I've done a lot of work to understand where it comes from, now it gives me the framework to navigate my life in a way that I don't need to be consumed by it anymore.
So you named a couple. That's wicked, man. Thank you you nailed that. Like you're so sure about that. You've obviously been doing the work to such a degree that answer came through you like it's the nectar within you. It's the essence of you. And
Thank you.
Yo, bro, real recognize real, man. Like, you know, you guys started doing Bond Lake. That was not long after Jenya and I ushered that. We pioneered that Bond Lake plunge experience, right? And where did we get that from? Guys who you didn't see posting anything. They were just doing it for years and years. These Russian old grannies and grandpas. But the thing is, like, yo, the practice is access to that self-inquiry.
Absolutely. So
practice.
For me, like all of those things worked.
So I was gonna say, is there any
breath
one
work, like,
because you mentioned a couple. You
listen,
mentioned
so daily. So what's
sweat
easy?
lodge. You
What's
mentioned
easy?
fasting.
What can you do every day? What's something you can do every day? It's breath work.
The breath is why. This is why I think is the most popular. and
Meditation is hard for some people.
which still comes back to breath.
Going for a jog in the. What can you do every day that allows
Altering
you to
your
become,
breath cadence, exactly.
Yeah, so you can become a little bit more self-aware. So give yourself that time to pause and reflect. And you know, we don't do that. Like we are so go. We don't take a time to pause. And you know, recently I got into the Gene Keys and Richard Rudd. He's like the Gene Keys.
The Gene Keys. I've heard of.
Okay,
this
it's
work.
gonna
I
blow your
haven't gone
mind.
into it yet.
Oh my God, I'll tell you a bit about it. So
tell us a little bit about
he's like he had this awakening, probably I think like early 2000s, and he kind of like started downloading information around astrology combined with the I Ching, the 64 hexagrams, and
Are you talking about human dynamics?
it's human design, but it's different than human design. So human design is like a map with how to kind of like live your life outwardly, like what's gonna really help you.
Right.
And this is more about like inward transformation and understanding yourself based on your natal chart. Same thing, but it goes through all these things. So
that's why I thought design. It sounded a lot like we were talking about. With
yeah. So I'll share a bit about my profile and what I learned about it. But in the one thing, like, so I listened to a lot of his talks, and recently he just talked about that pause and how animals in nature will just stop. If you have a dog and it goes for a walk, it just stops. And it just takes a moment to just like observe what's going on. We don't do that as humans. The 1 second we have, what are we doing? Grabbing our phone. We're trying to like squeeze in a workout. Like go. What's the next thing I gotta do? How do I knock off my to-do list?
Right.
And one thing for me was like just taking moments to just like stop. Really just stop. Take a breath. How am I feeling right now? Like what's going on?
Like really just like surrender.
Anytime
is the
throughout
word.
the day is just stop. Like just take a break. Take a breath.
Stop. I mean, stop sounds so hard, but when you say surrender, it's like surrender to the need that something has to be done.
Just pause for a few moments and just give yourself some space.
Let
Get
it
that
be
clarity.
done without any of your conscious effort. You're right, though. The dog's right. I mean, I'm a year of the dog, and I see they say let a dog roam, will find his way home. Part of that pausing, part of that getting lost is the process of being found, is getting clear.
Absolutely.
So what is the archetype then that you found? Is this like generator and
no, it's
projector?
different. It's different. Yeah. And so anyways, the other thing that he made really clear to me is like, you know, contemplation, you know, so you have on one side is concentration, right? Which is like really being focused, like on meditation, like concentrating on something. Yeah. And then you have meditation, which is about
Right
clearing
brain.
the mind, like just letting it go. But there's this in between, which is contemplation.
Con is the prefix of with.
Uh-huh.
Both brains.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So he's talking about the whole cerebral
so then
hemisphere.
contemplation is what a lot of people don't do. It's being able to kind of clear the mind, but also inquire at the same time. It's like taking that pause and just reflecting.
Clear the mind, but also inquire at the same time.
Right.
Pause. This is connecting the dots, and we love to save the dots in a rhyme structure. Why? Because when it rhymes, it's a lot easier neurologically to remember.
Yeah.
Right. That's beautiful, man.
And
Yeah.
so
Contemplation is kind of like prayer and meditation, where it's like you're speaking to, but you're also listening.
at the same time, you're contemplating, you're asking questions, you're inquiring, but you're not like focusing. You're not trying completely to
forcing an
disassociate.
outcome or
It's just like sitting
dissociating.
with something, sitting with a
Yes.
feeling, with an idea, and not forcing it to have meaning, just to
Right,
really
right,
sit with it.
right.
And sometimes he talks about you can contemplate something for years
Yes.
until you really grasp the essence of the knowledge that's within it. You know, like some people practice something their whole life and they
I'm
don't
just hearing
really
years.
understand
The
it.
idea of contemplating one thing for years,
Mhm.
like you just said that, and that doesn't just go past my head, because when you bring in that kind of time, your moon is it your moon in Capricorn? You're in your natal chart, or is your rising is Capricorn?
I'm Taurus.
Taurus sun
Taurus sun, yeah.
with.
I'd have to ask my astrologer,
Yeah,
Carm. I just
I
actually
remember
did my
Capricorn
reading.
was one of them in there, or Gemini was
Maybe.
moon in Gemini, and
Yeah.
then right. We talked about this when I did my last event.
I should
Connecting the
rhyme
dots.
my astrological chart so that I can know
There
the
you
next time
go.
you ask, I'll remember.
Maybe that's a service I could start offering. for
astrological
connecting the dots.
rhyming, yeah.
We'll give you your own like rap verse and song of your natal chart, so you
There you
never
go.
forget, you know. But I do remember a Gemini and a Capricorn in there, and Capricorn rules time. So when you mentioned that, the idea of over the course of years contemplating one thing, I assume you've been contemplating. for
Yeah,
time.
and things change over time, and not that they change. I have a deeper level of awareness towards
That
it.
changes,
Something that I've
yeah.
been working on, or a feeling, or a truth, or a blockage in my life. And when you're doing the work, whether it's through plant medicine or meditation or breathwork, and it just this essence comes through. So in the gene keys, they talk about this transformation. So each key has like a challenge, a gift, and a city. You know, and the
And say it
city, SIDDHI. It's like the highest expression of that gene
Okay,
key,
got it.
right? So for me, you
So
know,
liability and asset, and then this like
it's like the challenge,
Essence.
the gift, and the essence, like the
Essence,
greatest
yeah.
expression.
Gotcha.
Okay, and so, you know, again, I did my human design years ago, and I really believe in synchronicity.
what are you in your human design?
I'm like a 5-2 generator, manifesting generator thing.
Manifesting generator. Oh, okay.
Maybe a
Okay.
generator.
I'm a generator. I know
But-
that.
so-
Manifesting generator was like a very small.
I'm a generator.
Okay.
So anyway, so I did that years ago. Someone told me to do it. I read it. At the time, my awareness wasn't ready for it. So half the things I read in there that didn't resonate,
Went
I was
over
like,
your
this
head,
is
yeah.
bullshit. No, this is not me.
Or you didn't land.
Because
it
I
didn't
couldn't
stick.
see it, you know. And
Yeah.
then recently, like I really believe in synchronicity to bring the awareness to things that you see. So
Absolutely, brother.
a friend of mine tells me about the gene keys, and I'm like, yeah, I heard about that. I remember I did this human design, so I read it. This is 5 years after I did it, and now reading it again, I was like, if I would have just listened to this, I would have saved myself so much pain and suffering.
Yeah.
But I needed that pain and suffering to bring my
Yes.
awareness to where it is now. So I'm
Yes.
grateful. But now I
Thank
see, you know, how I'm meant to be a teacher. And I was like, 5 years ago, you told me I was meant to be a teacher. I was like, you're crazy. You know, like, but now, like, all I do is
Now
teach.
yes.
Breath work, coaching, retreats. Like
Yes.
it's when I'm like in flow completely.
So that's when you feel like you're. What do you define teaching as? What does it mean to teach? Because
Just
people, there's teach and there's preach. Teaching and preaching are like almost. They're a fine line.
For me, teaching is just sharing a little bit of wisdom I have with the intention that it affect someone in a way that's beneficial to them.
Sharing a little bit of wisdom. This is important because I think there's a lot of teachers, but there's a lot more preachers. And this is one of my favorite. Another little rhyme. What's the difference between teaching and preaching is reaching. And how do you reach someone? Is you just said it. You share your own wisdom. What is wisdom? Not knowledge, not regurgitation of information. You share your experience, and that lands. That reaches.
I knew right away, like, I don't want to learn from someone who learns something from a textbook. I'd rather have an ex-addict as a coach that's
Exactly.
teaching me how to get a recovery than a doctor that never knows what it felt like to be an addict.
Who knows everything about
You
all
know?
the dopamines and epinephrine?
I don't want a
You're
business
right,
coach
you're
that's
right.
never failed in business before.
right.
That's just read all these economics textbooks and can tell you
Yes,
every
yes.
graph there.
Absolutely.
So-
or a personal trainer who's never, been both ripped and completely out of shape.
And look at the health ministers we have now. They're telling us how to be healthy. Half of them are like,
God, man.
you know
me, I'm
shape.
a fitness guy.
You know,
man.
like
that boils my blood.
Right. And you look at the whole healthcare industry, like they don't talk about fitness. They don't talk about breath work. They don't talk about diet.
Yeah.
They talk about what pill can I give you
Right.
for your symptoms. So, you know,
All the Band-Aids.
like anyways,
Yeah.
I'm sure your audience already is familiar with all that stuff. But anyways, going back to the astrology thing. So the synchronicity got me looking at my gene keys. So I put them in and I'm looking at it, and the two main ones. So you get like 4 main profile gene keys in your profile.
Okay.
There's 64 of them. You can study any one of them.
Like I
if you
Ching, I
want.
think 64, right?
And
Yeah.
it matches your DNA because there's 64 rings of the DNA.
So helix,
Helixes,
yes, is it helix or codons?
Codons. And it's so interesting the way it's all connected. And so basically each one will have like this challenge, then it'll have the gift, and then it'll have the city. So for me, the 2 that really stood out of the 4 was transforming complexity into simplicity.
Oh my God,
and I
love
realized like that was one of the things I was here to learn. You know,
to make the complex simple.
To find a way to simplify my life, because I make it so complex. You know, serial entrepreneur, had an awakening, and then felt that now I'm doing everything that's good. So I created a more complex life with all these businesses around things that were good, which are still good, but they weren't serving me in the way that I needed to in order to really serve others through those businesses the way that I intended to.
Right.
You know, so it was a kind of like a trap I put myself in, a good one, because I had to figure myself out of it, but not just in business and everywhere. I just had this reflection like, shit, I've made my life so complicated.
Right.
And one of the things he says is like, yeah, people spend the first half of their life making it so complex. It takes the next half of their life to make it simple again.
Make it simple again.
And hopefully by the time they die, they have a simple life. Right. And so
this sounds a lot like your Gemini influence, because Gemini makes things very complex. It's so smart that it's just bored. It needs to make something challenging, and it does that by being complex.
Here I am at 40 years old, and
You're
I'm looking
40?
at my life. 41 now,
41.
going to 42. So I'm going to my next 7-year cycle in astrology next year.
Okay.
And so like I'm like, shit, it's so true. I got to do something about it, and felt stuck at the time. But I just got clear. I was like, okay, like within the next 6 months, I need to simplify my life. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm making that commitment to start cutting things that don't serve. And it kind of ramped up. You know, I kind of like a 2-year cycle of like crazy eclipses that were shaking things up, holding on to things way longer than I need to. And the last month specifically, like any relationships that weren't serving, any partnerships that I had to have the hard conversation, any businesses that weren't serving, I just started cutting them all, or having a hard conversation and seeing what would happen. But really expressing my truth and not being afraid of that conflict anymore. So because I have the clarity, now I need to integrate it and do it. So that was one of them. The other one was,
hold on, before even because we mentioned the simplicity, complexity, and I just pulled out a massive book of Da Vinci's, and that was one of his quotes. The ultimate simplicity, the ultimate sophistication, he said, is simplicity. So they're actually yin and yang. Gemini, kind of like, it's so smart. It's Hermes, right? He's got the wing. He's got this divine knowledge, but he's tripping over it. Jack be nimble. Jack be quick. Why does Jack get burnt trying to jump over the candlestick? Because he's too swift. And I think like this is where the Gemini mind has to slow down and become singular, like its opposite sign, which is Sagittarius. Singular and calculated into the future.
And that's been my whole life. Like I was too smart for my own good. Everything I would figure out with my mind, but I wasn't listening to my heart, which needs patience, which needs kind of like nurture, which needs like nurture, contemplation. It needs like all of that. So it doesn't mean
environment is so important. And then going back to trimming, that's where I was going to get to. Sorry. Da Vinci, then I'm thinking Renaissance. This is my ADHD brain. Michelangelo said, I didn't carve an angel. I removed everything that the angel wasn't. So like that really resonates deeply when you say like it really comes down to having those conversations, those uncomfortable, but trimming away all of that.
Because I know already it's not serving me, but there's a fear to have that because, okay, like I don't want the conflict, let it go. It's going to get better, but it doesn't. And also it's what's good for me is good for them. Although the conversation is uncomfortable for both of us, it brings awareness to both of us. You know, and however they take that, it's for me, it's like it's unconditional love, which means like I'm doing it from a place where I have no care of how they receive it. It's unconditional. So I'm just doing it from a place of like, listen, I need to do this. And you know, they may
not that I don't care. It's I don't care. I'm not scared.
I'm not expecting.
Yeah, there's no expectation. I'm detached. I'm committed to arriving to further simplicity and truth, but I'm not attached to any outcome. And
I'm just I know it has to happen, and my fear is expecting a certain outcome.
Yes.
or
yes.
something that's going to be hard for me to
Which-
deal with after, or it's going to have a ripple into like the rest of my life.
Right.
But most of those times, the expectations that I've seen in my life through even past experiences, like it's never what you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's never what you think it's going to be. There's no
Yeah.
crystal ball.
No.
And so just trusting that. And so one of my last ayahuasca experiences where
When was that? When was your last?
November, I was in
Okay.
Costa Rica.
How many times, if you don't mind me asking, have you?
I've lost track, but I'd say I've done about
So quite a
100
bit.
ceremonies in my
Really?
life. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of people say like, man, you must be
Wow.
really fucked up, you know, like you need that many ceremonies. But
Wow.
you know, it's just like this journey of
different
self-awareness.
every time,
Oh
right?
man. So like this last
Wow.
one, up until the ceremony, the first ceremony, we did 4 in a row. I didn't even know what my intention was, and then something triggered me right before I went in. You never check your email before a ceremony, but this time it was perfect. I needed it.
Never check your email before anything intentional.
But I needed
just-
it because it created my
it
intention.
presented the
Because like
intention,
something
right?
bad happened or something I didn't like happened, and my mind automatically went to worst case scenario. And the
Right.
ayahuasca showed me exactly where it came from. Being a
Right.
child, getting in trouble, not knowing what the punishment was going to be, and in that moment of fear, my mind was trying to map out just for some sort of structure and sanity what could possibly happen.
The possibilities to prepare.
And I carried that my whole life in relationships, and I was realized like, man, and
So you almost manifested by virtue of entertaining or having to imagine, so that you don't have to deal with the fear of the unknown. What your mind is doing is using its imagination, the divine faculty of manifestation, to prepare yourself for all the possibilities of what you don't want, rather than just surrender and be like,
and
yo, you know what?
most of the times, in almost every single time, what my worst fear was never happened. And when I look back at the worst moments in my life, it never happened.
False expectations.
You know?
Fear ain't real. Right?
And in this moment, it also
danger's real. Fear is the illusion, essentially.
absolutely. It also
Right.
showed me that. It was telling me a story about like how in all those times where I did something wrong, I did something bad, I never took into account how it was affecting others, because my story became more important. Like I needed that toy from that other kid because I didn't have it and I wanted it. Or I stole a comic book from a convenience store because my parents didn't give me extra money to go and all my friends had it, and I didn't
Right.
care that comic book was putting
Wasn't
food
even
on
the-
it was
yeah.
putting food on that family's table that owned that store.
Right.
You know, it also said, you know what, screw the government. Like if you screw them, it's
I was
okay.
gonna
The
say there's
ayahuasca
some-
told me that.
Yeah, I could see that.
But in
That calibrates truth
in
for
a
me.
funny way.
Yeah.
Never let your story become greater than your humanity.
Oh, I
Right?
like that.
And it's like if your story is like, hey, I need to kill to provide food or to protect my family, then your story is still
Is outweighing your
it's a win.
humanity.
It makes sense. It's in balance because you're doing it for the right reason.
Gives you virtuosity.
But if you're doing it out of greed, out of anger, out of
Right.
fear, like then your stories become greater than your humanity. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. So it was a really, really strong lesson for me.
That's
and,
huge.
And then the next day I went
don't
deeper
let your
with
story outweigh your humanity. That you can contemplate on that for a
it.
minute.
And so like, you know, and that's for everything. Like the things that people don't know you do, the things
Yeah.
that no one is paying attention to. Someone's keeping count. You know,
Right,
the big
right.
man upstairs when it comes to
Always.
judgment day.
Causation. Nothing goes unaccounted for.
And so,
Yeah.
you know, I knew like going into fear was going to be hard because when you set intentions for ayahuasca, like it usually gives you what you need, not what you want. But fear is a tough one because you never know where it's going to go.
That's just
And I just the whole week, every day was like, I want to know more, like fear again. And the next day it took me on another journey. And I'll just to make a long story short, what at the end of the whole story, you know, in this motherly whisper, it's like, you know, you want to know what the real antidote to fear is? And the way it said it was, have faith in us. And what it meant by that was
who do you feel the us
have
is?
faith in yourself and God because we're one.
Or one.
You know,
In
and if you
us.
don't have faith, you're gonna have fear. If you don't have faith in a higher power, in truth, in that love in your heart, then you're gonna let fear creep in.
Yeah.
And whenever you lose your way, you've lost your connection to us, which is God, creation.
Got it.
Non-denominal. Like doesn't matter what religion, it's that faith.
Yes.
You know? And it was just like boom. And so like now that I'm going through this process of going to the fear of the hard things, I just really reconnect with that faith.
With the
and trust.
faith
And
and
it just
trust,
makes it
yes.
so much
Yes.
easier because I got to believe in something, you know?
Brother, that is
Um,
beautiful. It made me breathe, take a nice deep breath. Just when I hear truth, I think all of us at the core, when we hear something that's so true, you know, power versus force, remember? Like there's certain attractor patterns that calibrate so high. And when you hear it and you feel it, you just, either sigh or you just take a nice breath and you internalize it. The more we allow the fear, which is like a root, because it's like a negro, like nature, a weed, the more we allow it, obviously it's raping and pillaging any chance of faith, space for faith. Another thing, what do you feel on this? For me, I find faith has been a big thing. I mean, my moon is in Scorpio, and then I'm a rising in Sun in Leo. So it's this massive dichotomy. Scorpio is at its core atheistic. It's actually angry at God, right? It was the one that's, punished. It represents like Judah, right? The bad guy. But why was he so bad? He actually had the knowledge. He was trusted with the knowledge, but he's then the one who kisses, Jesus, betrays Jesus. Anyways, so it's this natural faithlessness and trust only in knowledge and the ability to control. That's Scorpio. Then there's Leo, which is this utter abundance, like faith-based, just trust, just give, generosity, like the sun, completely authentic. There's no need to anything but raw and real. And I find that my faith, putting my faith in the right place has been the biggest challenge for me. And questioning the question of faith, because I've experienced God. I don't believe in God. I say I've experienced and continue to experience as I continue to surrender. Because I know even just with my injuries, I've injured myself in ways that I should not be able to get on a Bosu right now and do 10 inverted push-ups consecutively. I should not be able to do a standing backflip, you know what I mean, after ACL tears and meniscus. But I trust that this healing, it's not because of coagulates and all this like other scientific kind of explanation of physiology. It's because there's some force telling those cells to regenerate. And that's where I find I return every time to my faith. So like for people who are, I think, challenged with that, like don't allow for the space to be contained or filled with not even an ounce, because it's like, I think he called it drifting, Napoleon Hill's book, Outwitting the Devil. Did you ever...
No, I haven't read that
come
one.
across that one? Really good. Like he's like having a conversation with the devil. He tricks him into an interview that the devil has no choice now but to have this interview with him. Sure enough, Napoleon Hill's a Scorpio, perfect person to write such a book. Like I tricked the devil into having to have a conversation, have an interview with me. And he interviews him, but he talks about drifting and how it just starts with, I'll have that one smoke, or I'll, eat that one, whatever sugary, fatty food. But then it's like, it just cascades, man. So it's like, I think that was the Don Miguel Ruiz's be impeccable with your word. Impeccable, you remember, it means like the etymology is without even sin, like a single sin. Thing is, we're human. So that's where like energies like Piscean energy and compassion and the ability to be gentle with ourselves and recognize, like you said, us. It's one, God and you, your ego and your soul, your higher self, your lower self, whatever you want to call it. They're one, and they're up to something. And if we surrender and trust that, then we can be up to it with them. But that's not easy because we can't control. Right?
Yeah, and I believe along that same vein of thinking, like all of these variables that come into our life that affect us, like the family we're born into, the country, the social class, the astrology. It's this perfect prescription for your challenges as a spiritual being on this path.
Right.
And when people get to the point of questioning God, themselves, reality, it's amazing because it brings them to that point of that, like really like questioning, like what the fuck is going on.
Man.
Right. And that's where the transformation can happen, where the challenges is there for us to evolve. Right. You got to honor that sometimes and just, like, even though it's hard and it seems like it's dark and all these things, like, listen, it's okay. Like, we'll see what happens. You know?
I love it, man. It leaves us off in this sort of sense. Like, I don't even need to ask any more questions. I feel like we just covered a lot of ground in a little time. Here we are, like, where the only currency is our time and attention. So even the most inquisitive, the most seekers of truth, like, we don't even have time to tune into our favorite teachers for longer than sometimes, like, I can get up to maybe half an hour straight because it was before I went to bed. And I'm trying to cut that habit. Because I don't want to go to bed listening to, even though the idea is like, oh, but I'm planted in my subconscious. No, I need to rest. I learned that. My brain needs to rest. All day, I'm planting shit in my brain, even unconsciously, whether I'm walking by a billboard. It's happening, right? But yeah, man, like I'm wanting to keep it really small packets. You know, I'd like to
Perfect.
invite you back. I know
I'd love to.
you're
Anytime,
back and
man.
forth. I think maybe in the future, if it's a, you know, we can coordinate to jump in the lake. You know, once
Perfect.
It's all
Yeah, I love
frozen
that.
over.
Yeah, let's do it.
Just for old time's sake.
100%.
You know?
Yeah, you're gonna ask me twice.
Yeah, I would actually just let's leave on that. Like, of all the things you mentioned, sweat log, fasting, and breathwork, which one would you, and maybe what order? Because I think ayahuasca, I don't want to even talk about that. I
We'll
think
have a whole nother podcast around that.
yeah, because that's going really, really deep, and that's something you should check with your doctor. I think for some people like myself, I've got vasovagal syncope. So for me, I could end up in a psychogenic non-epileptic seizure. That wouldn't be a good buzz for anyone there because I need an ambulance and I'm biting my tongue and shit. But like the things that are natural, like in the Bible, like fasting, right? Like, tell me in what order, or like tell me which ones you could really recommend the most for people that.
Yeah, so my daily routine, I wake up first thing, I do a bit of breath work. First thing,
Like before you get out of bed.
right when I get up, a little bit of breath work, meditation, not much, just enough to kind of clear my
Hypotropic, like
mind.
right off the bat, as you
Yeah, it
open
depends
your
how I
eyes?
feel that day. You know, like
Okay.
sometimes I'll do breath holding, sometimes I'll do like more intense breath work, and go straight in the ice bath. Like so,
And then
like
straight in the ice bath.
straight in the ice bath, and then in the evening I'll do a sauna. And it helps me
Okay.
to kind of like wind down and just go
Right,
in there,
right.
and I'll either put like a talk on or just go into quiet, let my mind kind of like wind down,
Right,
contemplation.
So the cold in the morning, like yang in the morning,
Yeah.
and then yin, of course, to finish.
Just to slow things
Yeah,
down.
absolutely.
But I would say like when out of all these things, like something sparking your curiosity, like go for it, try it, because then
Yes.
you'll understand if it's for you or not. And even if it's challenging, like if it's that intuitive kind of like thing, like go for it. Like when I first heard about ayahuasca, like the alarm bells were going off.
Yeah.
You know, I knew like there was something there, so I went
Right,
fasting. I went deep into fasting, like a 55-day fast, like juice
Really,
fast,
eh?
like
55 days of juicing.
yeah, like I lost like 50 pounds. A dry fasting, like 5 days, no food and water. Like
Wow.
pushed it, you know.
Wow.
But like if you can intermittent fast for 8 hours a day, it's good. You know, if you do
Yes.
breath work for 3 minutes, it's good. Like figure out what you can do that it feels good with you. That it doesn't have to be so extreme,
Right.
and experience it. You'll know if it's for you or
You'll
not.
know.
You know, like just listen to your intuition. And most people
Totally.
are so like caught in the mind and like overthink that they can't even hear their intuition. They can't feel.
Yes.
You know, and that's the
Yes.
first step. Is like, how do you like slow this down so you can listen to the voice that's already been talking to your whole life, your gut instinct, your intuition. It's there.
Yes.
And when I started doing this practice, that voice got louder.
It got louder,
You know,
yes.
whether I listened to it or not, that was
Yes.
my choice,
Right.
consciously or unconsciously.
But the noise floor came down.
But I could hear it now.
The
And now I
dynamic
had to have the
range.
courage to kind of, okay, like
Yes.
my intuition's telling me this.
Yes.
I got to take action on it. I got to integrate it into
Exactly.
reality.
Gotta
So-
listen to my
so-
intuition. Stop wishful thinking. Stick to the mission. The mission, I think, is the constant self-inward inquisition.
That's what it's been for me, you
Yeah.
know, and that's what I can only share from my own experience. That it's been great. It's been a long journey, a lot of dead ends, a lot of times where it's just like,
Sure.
you know, but like that moving into the hard things, looking at the stuff that you need to look at that's uncomfortable, that most of us, that I've buried for a long time and covered up with overworking, with alcohol, with
Yes,
partying,
yes.
whatever that was distracting me. You know, like allowing yourself to go in there, that's where the transformation lies. And most of
Yes.
us would rather stay uncomfortable than go into the unknown, but we don't know that in the unknown, our wildest dreams are out there somewhere.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so-
Indeed. Our greatest fear is that which we don't know, and yet
Mhm.
the purpose for why we're here, the answer to the great question, why are we here, lies in the direction of that which we most fear. So what a conundrum.
And
You know?
it's interesting that the architect designed us in this way so that our subconscious mind would latch onto the certainty and the uncomfortableness.
Yes.
It's up to us to choose to go into the unknown.
Choose.
You think about it,
Choose.
it's
Not
like-
decide.
Yeah.
Choose. There's a difference.
And yeah,
To decide
exactly.
is to it's like homicide. It's like to cut away the what might not work, and to choose to just use the free will, single pointed, like he called it the definite chief aim, Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich. But like just choose, and then everything else just dissipates, like peripheral.
And that's what it's been, and
Amen.
it's exciting. So yeah,
Amazing, man. I'm just going to close this off with my favorite context of this whole podcast, which is that when the thoughts are calmly collected and the imagination is properly directed, the dots are easily connected. I'm your host, Nico Sofianos. Remember who you are.